It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast. We're in the studio at TG Carr Studios here in Ballinahown, and we've just watched Connacht blow another defeat in the last minute of the last play of the game as they go down 18-14 to Benetton. We've got Rob, you've just come off commentary there. That's pretty gutting considering that all Connacht had to do was defend for one phase of rugby, having done so well earlier in the match.
Yeah. Do you know, I'd be interested to see what both yourself and William say on this, but I think we kill ourselves trying to look at the macro, and sometimes games are played in the micro. So what I mean by that is, like, let's just take the 80 minutes we just watched here. Forget about their full of Italian internationals, just like you forgot last week that Lions had no internationals. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that stuff doesn't matter. It just matters on the rugby match that's in front of you. And the rugby match that was in front of us, really, Connacht spent a lot of the second half in their own half of the field, spent a lot of the first half in the Benetton half of the field. It was a fairly evenly balanced game with two sides making an awful lot of errors, and Connacht figured it out, got a big turnover off Keane Prendergast to save a try, got a big turnover off Seamus Hurley-Langton, and eventually turned the tide, got up the field, got a great try from Prendergast, who I thought was immense once again, and couldn't hold the victory. And ultimately Benetton, in a scrap, had what it took to win it with him.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they came in with a lot of potential with the players coming back. I don't think it actually helped them very much. Some of those players didn't look particularly bothered. But Connacht, again, have lost a game on the last play for the third time this season, which is something they have to, I don't know whether address or face up to. It happened in Edinburgh when they would have had a draw. It happened at home to Leinster when they would have had a win, and it happened today when they would have had a win. And you add up the points from that and the pressure that it puts on, and this is another one that got away. I would also say the game in Belfast against Ulster before Christmas got away, but, you know, that's neither here nor there now. Mathematically, they're still well involved, but they're now further back into the corner. There's 5 games left. They've got to win a minimum of 4 of them, which means either winning in Munster or Leinster away. They've 2 home games against Zebre and the Stormers, and they have an away game against the Dragons. So the Zebre and the Dragons are the 15th and 16th ranked teams in the tournament. But this is going to be another hard one to swallow. You can tell by the end, you sort of knew what was coming. You got to work out a better way to see out the game. There was a kick involved there that didn't go the right distance. There was a couple of tackles missed there right at the end. Treviso were living in hope rather than anything else, but they got the job done, and the questions will remain. But next week is the champion or Challenge Cup game away in Po. I don't know where Connacht are for that. It's interesting that the Lions, who gave Connacht a tonkin last week, actually come to play Benetton here. Be interested to see what Benetton get up to in that game. If they play as lethargically as they did in this, the Lions will beat them, I would expect. But the way they celebrated at the end, they knew exactly what this means to them.
Yeah, I feel like this is a turning point in their season, and that's bad news from a Connacht perspective.
Yeah. The other result today that's gone our way, yet again, more results going our way, is that the Sharks have hammered Edinburgh. So Connacht are on the same number of points as Edinburgh, but we're still in 9th, and the chances are they're going to get dropped down to 10th after this.
Yeah, the Lions will probably win. Ulster Stormers, is that a game this weekend? Have I got that right? I'm getting my fixtures mixed up. I think they're playing each other. So look, there's teams playing each other, but there's 11 teams going for 8 spots. We think the Ospreys might fall away. If the Lions beat them, that'll be the end of them. So then you have 10 going for 8. But Connacht, Ulster are on the slide form-wise. We'll see what Ulster do if they can turn it around this weekend. Connacht are the main ones on the slide, whereas the Lions are on the rise. Perhaps Edinburgh on the slide as well. So it could be Connacht and Edinburgh that would miss out if you were a betting man at this stage. But also, if you are fair about how things turned around last year, you have to acknowledge the fact that, you know, Connacht can still do this. It's just, as I said last week, I thought they were done for the playoffs. I'll say it again. I don't think they're going to make it. No,
and the only thing you can say is that last week was a pretty shocking display. At least they showed a lot of fight.
Agreed.
A lot of, and especially the bench. The bench last week were shocking. Whereas today the bench made a big difference and brought them all the way back into the game. I think we were having a heated discussion at half time about work rate, and in the second half we got a lot of work rate I think one of the reasons we see a lot of Andrew Smith, his work rate is off the charts. If that lad could learn how to score tries, he'd be world class. But where it's not just about work rate, there has to be something else there as well, and Connacht just don't quite have it, William.
Yeah, I still think they'll make the 8 myself. I think they'll win the next 2 games easily. They got to get 10 points in them, and I think they're well capable of beating the Stormers, who don't seem to be able to put a performance away. I know they will probably have to win one game of either Munster or Leinster away. They mightn't have to. 10 wins might get you 8th. That'll get you a trip to Leinster, which might be a pretty daunting experience, but you would take it at this stage. They desperately need Champions Cup rugby. Challenge Cup rugby is not good enough for the game plan. In terms of the interest that Connacht need. There is no interest in the Challenge Cup. There's no interest in it even next week. It starts when you get to the semi-finals. That's the only time that anybody even acknowledges it. The fact that Ulster are down there, this time playing Montpellier, might give it a bit more interest next week. So the opportunity is there.
Hang on, we're going to take a break here,
take
folks, because
yeah.
we're going to get the post-match.
Pete Wilkins, you wanted a response from your team. I guess the last gasp defeat says that this was certainly a much better display against a side that were favoured coming in, but to lose it like that, there'll be scant consolation in the losing bonus point one.
Yeah, look, I think obviously frustrated, disappointed. Like you said, anytime you lose a game that late on, having worked so hard to put yourself in a positive position, obviously the disappointment's gut-wrenching. At the same time, incredibly proud and I suppose reassured with the energy, the physicality, just the overall response to, not just the performance of last week that was, not where we need or expect it to be, but also in terms of the week that we've had, in terms of processing that and trying to put things right. I just thought, the players stood up to be counted, and I couldn't have asked for any more from them in terms of that attitudinal sense. But look, to lose it at the death is obviously hugely disappointing.
Why did Benetton win this game from your perspective?
Look, I think they controlled the attacking half of the field better. I think they won that territory battle in the second half. We won it pretty convincingly in the first half, which I was just talking to the Benetton head coach. It was the exact opposite of the wind direction, strangely. But I thought we controlled territory on the whole first half, and as a result of that, we're able to keep banging on the door and put ourselves in a decent position by half time. But I thought second half they spent too much time, between halfway and our try line. And ultimately, as valiantly as we defended through that, at some stage you're going to give them an opportunity or a half opportunity. We did get out of our half at times, and I think maybe there were just a couple of rash decisions where we either got tackled into touch or turned the ball over, where we just needed to knuckle down, either bank some more time with the ball or take a few more meters with the kicking game and spend a bit more time down there. So, look, I think Benetton did a super job in that second half in that respect, but I think we could have impacted more than we actually did.
You say some rash decisions. Did the players feel the pressure this week, do you think? And today, did some of that come true? Obviously the underperformance last week, the pivotal nature of this fixture in terms of playoff battle. Do you think some of that was coming true in some of the little errors that maybe gave Benetton the initiative?
I think it's a fair question to ask, but I don't think I saw that. I'll look back on the review. I didn't feel I saw that across the 80 metres. I actually, saw today a real willingness and ability to stay on plan and not to get flustered and not to try and force a try from nowhere or not to feel that we had to score with every attacking sequence that we had. I actually thought the patience and the discipline to the plan was pretty good. And I actually said to the players in the pre-match team talk, I felt that all week, from Monday of our jog throughs to Tuesday and to Thursday. After every session, I came away feeling that we were really well aligned in terms of how we wanted to play the game, which was going to require an enormous amount of physicality, but also real patience, not to try and force things. It was going to be hard to break Benetton down. So look, I felt guys stuck on task. There were probably just one or two small moments where, if a kick doesn't find touch, we're just sort of snatching at a kick, and the next thing you know, you're defending counter-attack rather than having time to reset at a line-out. Or, as I said, anytime you get tackled into touch, you always feel a frustration that we needed to control possession better there. So, look, one or two moments that, we'll certainly review and we'll certainly hold players to account on. But as I said, the effort and the fight within the team was exactly what this club is about. And said to the players there in the change room, that's our benchmark. That's the reminder of what we're about. And we can always layer the rugby on top of that and the rugby decisions on top of that. But we don't drop from that kind of intensity and work ethic. And if we ensure that's the case between here and the end of the season, we'll be in those playoffs and, we'll be in control of our destiny.
No guarantee it has to work out this way, but you're probably going to have to win away in an Interpro at some point to get to those playoffs. Now, you're behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Do you feel it that that's the case from your perspective?
Possibly. Look, I think when you look through expected results and movement of us and movement of other teams around us in the table, there's a possibility we'll have to win an away Interpro in there. I think, what I've certainly learned this season, but from previous seasons is, as much as you map out the games you think you're going to win and you think you might have to, you might be more challenged, often the landscape shifts and, you win a game you're not expected to. That was probably us away in the Sharks and all of a sudden that changes things. You lose a game that you're not expected to, like us against the Lions, and it changes things. So there'll certainly be a ripple effect of the game today. It won't cause any panic in us, but it will certainly make the next few weeks clearer in terms of what we need to do.
How important is the Challenge Cup in your landscape right now? Is it a welcome distraction, or would you prefer to be getting right back at it in the URC?
I'm delighted to have it next week, to be honest. I think firstly, any chance to play in a knockout game in Europe is brilliant. I'd never wish that opportunity away. I think for us, there's always a change of feel in European weeks, which probably isn't a bad thing after our Lions week into our Benetton week and the results and how that's flowed. And I think it'll be welcomed by us. I think, any time we've spoken about European competition, either of them this season, the players have got a real fire in their bellies to make a statement and achieve something there. So, look, I'm delighted we got the game. The players have dusted themselves down, and I've no doubt the 23 we take to Poe will be fired up and ready to go.
Great stuff. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate the time.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate. Cheers.
So that was a pretty disappointed Pete Wilkins there, trying to make the best out of yet another last-minute defeat. But I was just looking through the Benetton scores at home this season. They have won 5 of their 6 games. Of those 5 games, they've won 4 of them by scoring a try in the last 5 minutes. This is something they do on a regular basis. So it's not just necessarily about Connacht not doing it, it's also the other team being capable of doing it because they're getting used to it.
Yeah, a little bit, but look, they shouldn't have scored the try. It's that simple. The defence didn't set up properly. There was an issue about a length of a kick that wasn't right. You've got to get that distance right. I don't have a problem with players kicking the ball away because you give more penalties away if you're holding on to the ball, and there's so many other technical offences around that. Yeah, the issue of losing games in the last minute, it's cost them 3 points. It's cost them a point in Edinburgh. It's cost them 3 points against Leinster, and it's cost them 3 points against Benetton today. So that's 7 points. You could add in as well the failure to win right at the end in Ulster, but I forget that. I'll just say that they've let games go.
But so have other teams, and I'm looking at the Sharks have just hammered Edinburgh. So Edinburgh on 34 points. We're on 34 points.
Oh yeah, but I think the whole point is we're very far from out of this.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of teams not playing particularly. I don't think Edinburgh are a particularly good side, and they fell away badly last season late. There's only a couple of really good sides in this competition. Leinster in first, the Bulls in second, and Glasgow in third. And after that, everything is a little bit up and down.
Yeah,
and anybody can beat anybody.
And then if you saw what Leinster did to the Bulls last night,
well,
there might be they're quite a distance ahead of everybody else. If they didn't respect this tournament last year and it bit them on the ass because they didn't pick the right side against Munster in the semi-final and they lost. So this season I would expect that Leinster will not lose if they get to a semi-final, and they'll be trying damn sure to try to win it. The problem for Connacht is they're in a hole now. Yeah.
There's no other way around it. But if you wanted to pick a game to play at home to the side that are bottom, would be your first choice, and then away to the side who are second bottom would be another good choice. Then it gets more complicated. Munster away, yeah, Munster are beatable at home. Of course, any team's beatable, but we don't do it very often.
No.
Then you've got a home game to the Stormers, who haven't reached the heights of last year.
But are coming back into form.
They are, and that is a huge game in Galway. They don't like playing on an artificial surface. I think it's something that's in their heads more than anything else. And then you're away to Leinster, and we don't win up there very often either. So that's the problem. it's the failure to close out games has left them 7 points adrift of where they should be, and it's also a much tougher setup. Last year, Connacht were 4 wins and 7 losses after 11 games, but 6 of them games were inter-pros, and then they got on a run of 6 out of 7 to finish on 10 wins. Munster had to do us a big favour on the last day, remember?
They did.
But we got not beating, it's a funny one, and this is worth repeating, not beating Glasgow was probably the best thing we could have done, because Glasgow in the quarter-final, we got Ulster, and Ulster were a side that you could beat in Belfast. But that was last season, so what they've got to do with this season, first of all, they've got to get ready for Po. They've got potentially 2 European games ahead of them.
Yeah.
They can't really worry about Zebre coming to the Dexcom, and they can't worry about going to Newport for the Dragons. They've got to get their heads right. They need a win. A win next week would be a huge help.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that now. We'll go into it in a bit more detail during the week, but the last time Connacht won an away knockout game in France was 2005. That's a long, long time ago.
Yes.
And that was because it was at the time they used to have the home and away quarterfinals. They've never won a one-off game in France, or England for that matter, once they get into the knockout stages of the Cup. So it's a massive ask.
It is a massive ask. Partly, it's going to be fascinating to see. Pola lost last week to Clermont Auvergne. Today, later on today, they're away to Toulouse. They're going to lose that, I'd say.
Yeah,
so
they've only lost twice at home all year.
Exactly. But that won't get them, funnily enough, to the playoffs by the looks of it. It's top 6, very simple. The top 2 go to the semi-finals, 3 to 6 play each other in quarter-finals to make up the semi-finals. They're desperate for that. So they have a decision to make next week. Are they interested in the Challenge Cup? Yes, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. My guess is they couldn't care less about it, because top 14 is more important to them. Will they want to win a home game? Yes. Will they fancy a trip up to Benetton? Maybe not. Will Benetton beat the Lions? If the Lions turn up with an attitude like they did in Galway...
Well, they're 12-0 down to the Ospreys.
Yeah, there you go. So you see, they had their day in the sun last week. That's why it's fascinating. I think Connacht just have to go and see how they get on there.
Yep.
We know Bundy's going to be back. We know Finley's going to be back, or they should be back.
Yep.
We could have done with them today. We certainly... absolutely could have done with Bundy today. If it had Bundy, we would have won the game. There's no question.
I think so, because I think if you look at it, in the end, the game, like if you look at Benetton, they lost a couple of games during the Six Nations that they could have won in the last minute, because they didn't have their Italian internationals, and that's the difference the quality makes. There's a belief that comes with that quality. There's a belief that comes with, yes, we can win games. You know, and I know you're not disagreeing with me here, but the difference is they lost games they could have won if they'd had their internationals. If we'd had our international today, we might have won.
Yes, but I thought they were atrocious.
I
don't think they're a very good side, Alan. I know they've had a lot of wins.
Well, they are the low-scoring team.
Yes.
And they also let in a very few scores. Would you take
well,
away the big result against Leinster?
To be honest with you, for the people who turned up today...
Not very entertaining.
No, I mean, it's a game that's...
Well, actually, it's not very entertaining for lose, but for the winners, and we had this discussion... They win. They win at home, and their home fans go home from
yeah,
the
they
ground
probably
happy.
do. And I mean, Italian sport, I mean, their football team used to win every game 1-0 and then score in the 10th minute and then defend for the next 80. There was a lot of that today. But it'll be interesting to see how the rest of their season processes. And I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do in Europe. I really am next week, because, look, that game's on Saturday night. If the Lions were to win, which is probably unlikely, but you wouldn't know, then Connacht would know that a win in Po would give them a home quarter final against the Lions. That's the deal.
And I'm just looking, we're keeping an eye, because we're doing this straight after the game, but the Lions have just, Ospreys have a yellow card, the Lions have scored a try, so it's now 12-7. So it's putting a little bit of perspective into the result last week. Still not necessarily on the good side from Connacht's point of view, but I suppose the big takeaway from today, and Pete Wilkins said it, and I said it earlier on, the fight that was there is what Connacht fans expect from their team. And we saw it today for the first time in a few weeks.
Well, we saw it the first time since last week. I thought they fought okay against Cardiff. There was a good win in Cardiff against the poor side, and they beat the Scarlets. He's got to work with what he has, but the problem is last week was an inexplicable performance. That's what we can't get our heads around.
Yeah.
That's what I think they're not even able to get their heads around.
Yeah.
The problem today is much better performance. They still didn't win. Couldn't see out a game that they were leading with a minute to go.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and it was pretty abysmal defending, and there was missed tackles and people in the wrong place. And you're going, yeah, okay, he made a good run. But he didn't have to do an awful lot. You expect it to be a bit better than that.
The cover defence wasn't where it should have been.
No.
And they had numbers. It wasn't as though Benetton had got a 4-on-3. It was a 3-on-3 defensive thing, but one player actually, just made the wrong choice.
Yeah, they did, and that's not good enough. That's why you lose games, lose tight games. And I don't agree with you saying Benetton have won games like this. I thought
But
today,
they have. Like, statistically, it's there.
well, it is, but statistics in that, Connacht should have seen that game out. It wasn't that difficult. So I'm not saying that Benetton did that. Connacht allowed them to do it, and that's my concern. All they did was pass the ball across the line, and you should be able to defend that.
With an element of belief in that they've done that on numerous occasions before. And Connacht haven't been able, and this is the difference. This is the top 2 inches we were talking about. Connacht didn't believe. If Connacht believed they could see that game out, I think it was Tiernan, I might be wrong, was standing and he took a step in. If he'd stayed where he was, he had the line. The touch line was there. You just had to push a man hit the touch. That's the difference in belief. That's the top 2 inches that we're talking about.
But I don't think they had any belief going into that at all. I thought they just passed it across the line and they got away with it because Connacht made the mistake. Benetton didn't do anything to score that try.
They were going forward with it. It wasn't just a case that they shoved it along the line. They did draw a man. Each player drew the man. Not something Connacht were doing particularly well all day. But each player drew a man, which then possibly caused Tiernan to step in because he saw each of the Connacht players having to go back in. Possibly.
He's an experienced fullback.
Exactly.
And, but look, it's in all honesty, all they can do is park this. They'll analyse it, but they got to get ready for next week. I think the problem next week is they could take a hiding. And again, I'll say it again. I'm puzzled as to why. I know the reason is Bundy has a knock. He's been looked after. He's not in the first flush of youth. He's the first name on the Ireland team sheet, or certainly the second behind the captain. But that's what we're missing today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young players there. They played a lot better. They could have won. They should have won, but they didn't. And that's the bottom line. To give you an example, West Ham, my team, were 3-1 up at Newcastle, and they lost 4-3, 2 goals after the 90th minute. It happens in sport. Bizarre things happen. Players who've played well.
That's why we like sport, William.
Yes.
It's not writable. You can't write this stuff.
No, you can't.
Because it's just what happens out on the field. Someone makes a mistake, someone does something brilliant, and away you go.
Or somebody goes to sleep and poops their pants, and that's what happens. It happens in all sports. And when you're on a bad run, it happens more often. And the bad run of this started in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And it continued against Leinster. And they parked it, except against Bordeaux, who came and did a wrecking job.
Yeah, but they've done that to a lot of teams.
They have. But today, again, it gets away. It gets into your head. You've got to try to put it behind you, but it's not easy.
No.
But
I'll tell you what, we'll leave it there. It's been a long day, even though we're here in TG Car Studios, which has been brilliant, and the sun is now actually come out again. But we've got plenty to talk about this. We'll have plenty of audio again next week for everybody who wants to join up, and thanks for the people who have joined up.
We have a special interview coming.
Oh, that's right, we do,
and it's going to be around our special Patreon, for our patrons, and it's going to be our special Patreons quiz with some nice prizes. But that's all for next week when we've eaten our Easter eggs.
And that's if you want to join us on Patreon. We're on patreon.com/CraggyRugby. Join us up for a €5 a month. On match weeks, we give 5 podcasts out. That's €1 per podcast each match week. So, we don't do too bad. We do our best to bring you everything and anything we can. And as William says, we've got a special interview coming up next week with someone that we've been trying to talk to for quite a while. So let's see who that is. On Tuesday, Wednesday?
Well, we'll see. We'll release it. We won't tell you who it is, but we will release it maybe in time when you're getting on your bus or your car to go to Poe, and we might see some of you in Poe as well.
We might indeed. Okay, that's it, folks.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out, or nothing changes. Sad and confused. until